Okay, hello everybody, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be doing my May wrap-up, and this is going to be a speed run. I'm literally going to go as quick as possible. Everything's getting one sentence, maybe three, if I really liked it or if I really hated it and have a lot to say. And you'll see why when I start to do my Storygraph wrap-up, when I go over my Storygraph wrap-up. So let's just get right into it. In the month of May, I read 32 books. I don't know how I did that. And I read 10,712 pages. That is a lot. The first book I read this month was Siren Queen by Niveau. The middle book I read was The Moonday Letters by Emmy Idaranta. And then the last book I read this month was Wild Seed by Octavia E. Butler. My average book length was 364 pages, and my average time to finish was 2 days. I read 100% fiction books this month, no nonfiction. My top genres were fantasy with, I think that's like a whopping 23 books are fantasy, and then LGBTQIA with 14 books, then science fiction with 13, historical with 3, and romance with 3. It looks like the only days that I didn't read at least a single page were the 3rd, the 8th, and the 28th. And I read 88% of my books in print and 13 of my books digitally. I love a good physical book. I love the library. So we are just gonna get right into it and speed run the 32 books that I read in the month of May. And then I think from now on, I'm probably going to start doing, instead of one big monthly wrap up at the end of the month, I'm going to move towards doing weekly wrap ups at the end of the week, because frankly, this sounds like I'm humble bragging, but frankly, I just read too many books in a month to make these videos like fun to film, and I don't think they're very fun to watch either. Like, I don't have many subscribers. I don't think I have the goodwill for the first video of you watching me to be an hour-long video of me yapping about books. So I think splitting those up into weekly increments would be a lot easier for me, and I think I would have more time to like actually go into each book in detail and not feel like I'm wasting everybody's time, because it would probably be around like 5 to 7 books per week, and I think that is a much easier number to make a video on. And my phone storage would probably thank me as well, and editing me would thank me for shorter videos to edit. So after this video, we're going to weekly book wrap-ups, but let's get started with the monthly May wrap-up. So the first book I read this month, like I said, was Siren Queen by Niveau. I really enjoyed Niveau's Great Gatsby retelling, The Chosen and the Beautiful, which I read before this. It was the first book I'd read from her. I really enjoyed it, but I thought that the second half of the story was kind of weak because it didn't feel like she could choose between going really hard with the Gatsby retelling or breaking away from it. And Siren Queen was like everything I loved about Chosen and the beautiful prose, the beautiful character work, the really interesting exploration of like intersectional oppression in America, especially like the 1920s, but without Niveau having to stick to that Great Gatsby framework. So I think she was just allowed to do so much more with what she had, and I really enjoyed Siren Queen. It's like this beautiful old Hollywood vibe with the old Hollywood glamour, and like I really liked the literalization of all these like old Hollywood myths and like legends, and how Niveau did that. And I do wish the framing narrative came back in a little more, because through the novel you're aware that she's like talking to someone about this story, and like someone else is like interjecting in bits, but you never really learn. You only get a very brief glimpse into who that person is that is interjecting and to like why she's telling this story. So I wish that had come back in a little bit more at the end and been more impactful, but overall, really enjoyed this book, 4 stars. Second book, Cursebound by Sarah El Arifi. I know Sarah El Arifi is really highly praised for her other series, the Final Strife, the Ending Fire trilogy, I think it's called. I haven't read that. I think I probably will someday. They're just chonkers, and I'm not in the mood for that right now, but I read the first book in the series, Faebound, earlier this year, and like it sucks so bad, but I love it so much. This is like my flavor of romantasy slop. I think the world building in this series is really interesting and like really well done, but like everything else, the writing at times legitimately feels like a first draft. Like she just wrote a script and then someone published it. It really feels like there's a lot of just like line edits that needed to be done here that were just weird. The characters are not very interesting. The relationships are not very interesting. Like you give me lesbian enemies to lovers and I just don't give a fuck. Like something is wrong here. Like I should be all over that. And this book is just more of the same as the first book, and literally the ending of this book is exactly the same as the ending of Faebound, just like with slight tweaks. And yet I ate it up, and I'll be reading the third book, so sue me. 2 stars and a heart. 3, The Dead Cattail Assassins by P. Jelly Clark. I read another novella by him for a reading challenge and really enjoyed it, and I think I like this one a lot more. It's just a great fun little novella about an assassin, an undead assassin who is contracted to kill like her younger self from a different timeline, and so it's kind of about how she tries to get out of having to kill her younger self. And I really enjoyed it. Very fun, very great world building for what a small novella it is. Very cohesive, final feeling novella, and I did feel like some of the humor in this didn't quite land for me. It's like a steampunk, almost Victoriana-esque setting, but then a lot of the slang and like humor the characters use feels very modern. Like the evil wizards in this are called edgelords, which I'm not entirely sure worked for me, but I didn't hate it. Like it didn't take me out of the story, so whatever. And then the ending is very like Deus Ex Machina. But I still overall enjoyed this, and I can't wait to read his novel. Number 4, To Shape a Dragon's Breath by Monoquill Blackgoose. This is a really great dragon school book about like an indigenous girl who goes to like this colonizer school to learn about the dragon that she has been bonded to. It's like an alternate history of like the United States, where I think the main premise is that like England never existed and never colonized the United States, and thus a lot of the things that like the United States as a country does not exist, and things are in some ways better for the indigenous population and in some ways worse. And I thought that was really interesting, the way that was done in this book. I typically don't love like school settings now that I'm old and withered, but I actually really enjoyed how it was done in this book. I feel like Anakus is such a like steadfast protagonist, and like she really knows what she wants, and like her loyalty to her friends and her culture is so strong, and like she never wavers in that, and that could lead her to feel like a really stagnant or boring character, but it never does. Like I was always so invested in her and her journey, and like seeing her defeat these odds and like gain a place and do what she wanted in society, not even necessarily gain a place of respect in like the colonizer society, but just like do what she wanted, and find the friends that she wanted to have. And also there's hints of a bisexual throuple in this book, and I'm sad. Like I need the second book now for the bisexual throuple. 4 stars. 5, Jade Legacy by Fonda Lee. Wow, this book was a disappointment to me. I've seen people say they loved this book, they cried at this book, it was such a great ending, and I genuinely just don't know how people feel like that, because I dislike this book so heavily. And I actually really liked the first 2 books in this series, so it wasn't just that I always hated it. I really liked the first 2 books, but the 3rd book, I just felt like the constant time skipping and the constant like the severity of the time skips, and how Fonda Lee's writing style is like each scene is like a real-time scene that takes place over like a couple hours or a day at max, and then we time skip like a year forward to a new scene, a new time period. That did not work for me. It really stopped me from being able to connect to the characters, especially the brand new characters who it just didn't really feel like I got to know them. A lot of this book is focused on like boring geopolitical conflict and like not at all on the clans or the calls and like the next generation that were like taking up this fight. It was just really weird. It was not the kind of ending that I wanted for this series, but like I think like what Fonda Lee was going for here just did not work out that well. Like the whole generational saga, like passing the torch down to the next generation, it really fell flat for me because of the constant time skips and the writing style that this book is told in, the almost cinematic style where it's like scenes in a movie as opposed to like really feeling like you were traveling through time with these characters. And also, okay, call me feminist killjoy, but it really felt like the women had such a less role in this book. Like it felt like their entire role in this book, most of the women, all of the women, their roles in this book were to be wives and mothers and sisters, defined by their relationships to the men around them, and like they were always getting put in these situations where they were being kidnapped and tortured and the men were having to come save them, and I really didn't like that. I didn't like that Jaya, the only girl in like the next generation, didn't even get a POV in this book until 600 out of 700 pages through, so that also bugged me. But I still do like the first 2 books in this series, so like I don't know, I would still recommend this series to people, just with the caveat that it disappointed me personally in the ending, but I still do definitely recommend the first 2 books. 2 stars. Number 6, At the Feet of the Sun by Victoria Goddard. Another disappointing sequel. I really liked the first book in this series, The Hands of the Emperor. That book to me felt like a mix of The Goblin Emperor and Book of the New Sun, which is a crazy combination, but one that really worked for me personally. But this book just felt really stagnant, and like the slice of life stuff worked so much less well for me in this book when I liked it in the first book. And I don't know if that's just because I read it very soon after I read the first book and I was just tired of that concept, but it really feels like the slice of lifeness in this book serves no purpose. Like, there is no progression in this book. There's no sense that we are moving forward, both with like the plot. Like, we don't even begin the quest to find Tor's successor, like who is going to be on the throne after him in this book. And it felt like a lot of the relationship development was like just a lot more of the same. Very few things changed in this book in terms of like how the characters saw each other. Like, obviously the main one is the development of Tor and Kip's relationship and how they kind of get into this queer platonic relationship, like something that's not entirely romantic or platonic. But a lot of that again just felt very like we set up that relationship and then it just changed very, very little throughout the course of the book. There were like these tiny little things that would happen that would make them fight over it, and then a stagnancy for like 600 pages. Like, I just don't know if you can have a book this long and have it feel like so little happens. So I didn't like the beginning, and then I liked the middle part where they're like on this mythic quest, kind of, and then the ending again was very boring to me. So again, I just don't know if it's because I read it so soon. Maybe I would have been like more willing to take my time with it and like and just enjoy the slice of life, the journey that it was taking me on, if I hadn't just like been so ready for things to change and like move on, because that's just kind of not the vibe of this series. But anyways, another disappointing sequel, mostly just felt stagnant. Still 3 stars though, and if the next book in the series ever comes out, I guess I'll read it. Next, Nettle and Bone by T. Kingfisher. This so far is like the only T. Kingfisher that has just like wholeheartedly worked for me. I have enjoyed a couple other of her books, but not really liked them. I guess I liked Thornhedge, which is funny because this book made me like Thornhedge less, because Thornhedge in comparison just seems kind of like a watered down version of Nettle and Bone, which I did just really like. I thought that I wish it had kept that really creepy, really atmospheric vibe that we get in like the first chapter, but I still did like the rest of the book, and I really liked the sections in like the Goblin Market. That was really fun, and in like the catacombs, I really enjoyed that setting. Just some great settings in this book. Ironically, I didn't really love the main character or her like very casual love interest in this book. I feel like T. Kingfisher does this a lot, where she has like these protagonists that are older, but they still act like they're 16 years old. And like, I get that the justification for that in this book is that the main character, I don't remember her name, my bad y'all, Myra, something like that. I get that the justification for why she acts as young as she does is that she has like grown up very sheltered in this convent, like has never really had friends her own age, whatever, but you would think that would make her act older and not younger, like she literally was a 14-year-old. Like, it was just really stretching the bounds of my disbelief in this novel. But overall, I really liked the 2 old lady characters who did feel like their ages. I don't remember their names either, but I was like, this is the best T. Kingfisher book, and that's because it has old woman Yuri, like lesbian old ladies. I don't know if they're technically lesbians, but they were very much reading that way to me, and they like go off together at the end of the story. So I really enjoyed those 2 characters. 4 stars. And that actually convinced me to pick up more T. Kingfisher after I've had a really hit or miss time with her. So 8th is Gideon the Ninth by Tamsin Muir. Yeah, I finally read this book for the like missed trend square on one of my bingo cards. I put this book off for such a long time because I thought it would be too silly goofy. I thought I wouldn't like it. To my surprise, I feel like the silly goofiness of this book is like way overstated. There's like 4 meme references in this entire 450 page book, and I felt like they were all used effectively. Like, Tamsin Muir earned those meme references. They were all used to show Gideon's character and like show how underprepared she was for the situation she was in, and show how different she was from the other necromancers and their cavaliers. And so I really didn't mind the very few meme references. And then the book overall just felt a lot more serious than I was expecting. It's mostly just a really serious, competently done puzzle murder mystery book, and I really loved the world building in this. I loved the world building of the 9th house, like the gothic cultists, and I really enjoyed the glimpses we saw of the other houses and like how this society functions, like this post-apocalyptic space opera society, very dramatic society functioned, and crazy ending. So I really enjoyed that, and I'm glad I finally read it. People have been telling me for years and years and years that I would love this series, and they were right. 4 stars. Number 9, The City in Glass by Nevo. This, in the author's note, Nevo mentions that this is her pandemic novella, and I think you can tell, like, it's quite self-indulgent, and it has some issues with like the world building and with the character building, but overall I still just really liked it because I just really like Nevo's prose and like the questions that she's always asking in her works, and despite some of the issues I have with the world building, on the whole I really enjoyed it, and I would love to see her actually come back to this world that she establishes in The City in Glass and like show us more of it in some way with these characters or not with these characters, because that would be enjoyable. So 3 stars and a heart for that one. Next I read Moonstorm by Yoon-ha Lee. I'm a big Yoon-ha Lee head. I don't think you can see them, but they're just off screen. I love the Machineries of Empire series. I recommend the series to literally everyone I know. I've probably single-handedly gotten like at least 3 people to read the Machineries of Empire series, because that series is my jam. So I don't read a lot of YA, and that's what this book is, but I was just interested to see like what Yoon-ha Lee would do in YA and if maybe I would like this book because I'm such a big fan, and sadly I just did not like this. It really does just feel like Nine Fox Gambit teen edition, and I am a grown woman. Like I said, I'm bones, I'm old, I'm a hag. I just don't care about teen drama, and a lot of this book is focused on like teen drama as opposed to the parts of it that I would actually be interested in, which is fine because I can just go read Nine Fox Gambit and see people like torturing each other and stuff. I don't need that in a YA book, but it just didn't really grip my interest. And also there were like 5 inciting instances in this book, and every time I thought finally something's gonna happen, and no, they just go right back to high school in like a slightly different physical location. Okay, and the main character's motivations didn't entirely hit for me here. It just was so confusing why she was so dedicated to this like evil empire, despite the fact that she like had a horrible life growing up there and like was always treated badly by them. And I get why she would do that when she doesn't think any of her family or any of her like ethnic minority are still alive, but when she knows they're still alive, why is she not trying to get back to them? Why is she staying with this group and like being like, no, we have to fight the, you know, my former family, they're not my family anymore? Why though? Why? Not the worst book I've ever read, but also like I just don't like YA, I'm sorry. And this was not excellent enough to make me change my stance on that. 3 stars. Next was Network Effect by Martha Wells. This is the Murderbot novel, the first Murderbot novel. I really enjoyed this. I thought it had a really good mix of character development and plot action. I really liked that it was like kind of revolving around Murderbot and Art and their friendship, because I love seeing that friendship and love seeing Murderbot like try to deny the fact that it actually has made a friend that it cares about, and the kind of furthered focus on the human characters I felt like was also good. Like we're sticking with a very small group of human characters, and that makes them feel more likable and more believable, and I just enjoy seeing them come back. So 4 stars, really enjoyed that. Next is Fugitive Telemetry by Martha Wells, which is the next book in the Murderbot series, and this is like a fun little murder mystery with Murderbot trying to solve the mystery. I liked this one as well, very fun. I liked seeing different kinds of bots and stuff. 4 stars. And then next is System Collapse by Martha Wells. This is the most recent Murderbot novella. It was published in 2023. There hasn't been one since, and I think you can tell that she was kind of just getting burned out on this series by this point, because despite this being billed as like the second Murderbot novel, it's a little bit short for a novel, and it also was not as good as the other novel in the series. I would actually say it's one of the weakest books in the series. It just didn't really feel like it was a lot of plot, and the plot was like not as interesting to me as the plot in Network Effect, because it had to do with a lot of characters that we just don't know and we're not like meeting. And then the kind of personal conflict that Murderbot is dealing with in this book didn't really ever get resolved in a way that I found satisfying. And it's not even that like it needed to be resolved, because it's like a conflict that is ongoing, but like it felt like we made such a big deal out of addressing it, the fact that Murderbot like has PTSD basically from some of its previous experiences, but then we kind of just acknowledge that fact and then don't go anywhere with it. And it's like, why even bother finally like just stating it and acknowledging it if you're not going to have like something happen with that? Like, I don't know, it was a little bit disappointing to me, but I still overall enjoyed System Collapse. 3 stars. Next is Death of the Author by Nnedi Okorafor. This is a book that is so bizarre, and the further I get from it, the more I enjoy it. It's a book that I found while reading like just so unrealistic and pretty boring in places, but there's this twist at like the 75% mark that really recontextualizes a lot of the book and makes you view it in like a whole new way. And I feel like this twist is like I kind of hate it because it feels so much like a get out of jail free card for Okorafor. Like any criticism you have of the series can just be brushed away, or any criticism you have of the book can just be brushed away by this twist. But the more I think about the twist, the more I like it, because like it really does make you think about the concept of death of the author, and like how what we know about an author impacts how we view the story and view the characters. And I do enjoy that. Like I enjoy when authors take swings like that and play with those kinds of concepts, even though I didn't necessarily like the rest of the book. But if you are one of the people who, like me, read the story and are like, I don't really care about like her becoming famous from the science fiction novel and her getting canceled, and I don't really care about the sci-fi novel either, like it's kind of very generic and boring, and you're looking to DNF, I would say like I would say finish it up. I mean, it's not that long of a book. I would say just finish it. It's the ending truly did make me feel a lot more positively towards it in hindsight. So 3 stars, but now I'm thinking that that's too low. Maybe I'll give it a 4. 3.5. All right, number 15, and one of the only ones I have physically this month, is Don't Sleep with the Dead by Niveau. A lot of Niveau this month. I'm a Niveau head now. Whereas The Chosen and the Beautiful is this like really interesting Gatsby retelling about Jordan Baker if she was like a queer Vietnamese adoptee in the 1920s, and really deals with that intersectionality and like Jordan Baker's role in Great Gatsby in a really interesting, really well done way. This is just a little fun treat for the girls who read Nick Gatsby fanfic in high school, of which you might be able to guess I was one. So I really enjoyed this, but it's billed as a standalone, and I would not say this is a standalone. Like I think you really should read The Chosen and the Beautiful before you read this, and you definitely should have at least read The Great Gatsby before you read this. Otherwise, I don't think you would care for this at all. But I really enjoyed it, and I'm still gonna thank my coworker for buying me this at the independent bookstore. Thank you, my coworker. 3 stars. Number 16, I read The Moonday Letters by Emi Idaranta. This is like an epistolary novel, and it's about this woman who was born on Earth, who now lives in Mars, who is trying to find her missing spouse. And it's told entirely in like letters to her spouse. And I hate epistolary novels. I don't know why. I guess just because I can't like turn off that part of my brain that is like, this is so unrealistic. And I know lots of books are unrealistic, and I literally read nothing but fantasy, which by definition is unrealistic. But with epistolary novels, like I just start thinking about like, realistically, no one would write a letter like this, and realistically, no one has recall like this. No one can recall events this perfectly and write them down with this much clarity, and that just like is always something that is in the back of my head. It's so pretentious, it's so annoying. I hate that I do it. I hate that I hate epistolary novels, but I do. And epistolary novels is a square on Fantasy Bingo this year, so I wanted to get it out of the way first. And I actually liked it. I really like this novel. For an epistolary novel, I enjoyed it, and I'm always really impressed when novels can like create such a strong sense of character and such a strong sense of love through the absence of a character. Like you never see I don't even remember her name. You never even see the main character's spouse on page. You never see the real them, but you still get like such a strong feeling for their character and like what kind of a person they are, and how much the main character loves them through their absence and through the places they aren't, and through what she is saying in the letters. And I thought that was really well done. So 3 stars. And also her missing spouse may or may not be an eco-terrorist, which I thought was funny. Then I read The Bog Wife by Kay Chronister. This is a really atmospheric, like Southern Gothic story about patriarchal abuse. I don't think this will be for you if you're looking for like a really scary novel about like a creepy bog lady. There is a bog lady in this, but like for 75% of the story, you could read this as completely non-fantastical, like the bog wife isn't real or whatever, and it makes just as much sense. Like the bog lady only comes in for a brief moment at the end, and it does get weirder at the end, but if you're looking for a really scary story about a creepy bog lady, not for you. But if that concept does interest you, Southern Gothic story about patriarchal abuse and healing from that abuse, I would recommend this. I really enjoyed this. I thought it was a very nuanced look at like these very insular like Southern families and the abuse that they can perpetrate on each other. But I didn't think the ending hit a very good note for me. It didn't hit that right note between bitter and sweet and realistic and unrealistic for me, but I still did enjoy this book overall and recommend it. 4 stars. Next I read one of the other books I have. A Dark and Drowning Tide by Allison Saft. See, I don't want to put the books in the candle. This was a bad idea. Next time I'm not lighting a candle. I have A Dark and Drowning Tide by Allison Saft. What a shame that I did not like this book, because the cover is so beautiful, the characters are so interesting, the vibes are so immaculate, and yet the plot and world building of this book make absolutely no sense. No sense. The villain's plan makes zero sense if you think about it for more than 5 seconds. The world building makes zero sense if you think about it for more than 5 seconds. This is the one fantasy book that would have really benefited from having a map in the front, and it does not have a map for some reason. And I didn't love the ending. I thought the ending was really weird. Anyways, I wish I liked this more. 2 stars. And I read 5 Broken Blades by Mai Corland. This is a Fourth Wing meets Six of Crows. That's all I have to say. 2 stars. And a heart. Number 20, I read The Library at Mount Char by Scott Hawkins. I've just read this before. I've read this concept before. It's very similar to like House of Leaves or like Piranesi or various other books in which, or even The Magicians, honestly, like some of the later stuff in the Magician series, just books that are very dark and weird. But this book had like this very specific humor style that didn't really work for me. It gets really goofy in places, but like dark goofy, like Deadpool-esque style of 2015 humor that just doesn't really work for me personally. But if you do like that kind of humor, I would definitely recommend this book. And I did still find it interesting, but didn't love this book. 3 stars. 21 is The Adventures of Amina Al-Sarafi by S.A. Chakraborty, Shannon Chakraborty. This is a book about a retired pirate lady who gets drawn back into one last heist. And I really enjoyed it. I thought the character of Amina was really interesting, but sadly the side characters really kind of pale in comparison to her. They don't get a lot of character development or even like feel like they're really that close to her, minus one character, Dalila, I think is her name. I think that's how you pronounce that. But beyond her, none of the characters really feel like they actually have a real relationship with Amina or each other. Like the ending of the Daevabad trilogy relies very heavily on luck and like literal divine intervention rather than like Amina's own skill and knowledge as a pirate, which I didn't love. And the thing that really got me is that it's literally the exact same divine intervention as in the Daevabad trilogy. I did not realize this was gonna be a prequel to that series, I guess, or like a spin-off or something. So it's literally the exact same character in both books that is giving them this divine intervention via loophole, and I just don't love that. I'm like, can S.A. Chakraborty write a novel in which things aren't just magically solved by divine intervention? Like, I would like to see her do that because I don't think it's that satisfying. But anyways, overall, I did enjoy this. 4 stars. Number 22 was Don't Bite the Sun by Tanith Lee. This is a weird little sci-fi coming-of-age novel that I absolutely adored. Really ahead of its time, short and sweet. A couple things this reminded me of. It reminded of the Ugly series by Scott Westerfield, as well as the Lilith's Rude / Xenogenesis series by Octavia Butler, and The Left Hand of Darkness by Ursula K. Le Guin, to various degrees. Enjoyed this, a true hidden gem. Okay, number 23, another book, the last book that I have, Oranges Are Not the Only Fruit by Jeanette Winterson. This is a little book about like lesbian religious trauma, which I enjoyed, and I really liked the writing style, but it just didn't fully come together for me. It didn't quite have the impact that I wanted it to. 3 stars. Number 24 was Alana, the First Adventure by Tamora Pierce. I would have loved this book if I had read it when I was a kid, if I'd read it when I was the like age demographic for it, but sadly as an adult I just kind of can't help but disagree with this book's very dated messages on like feminism and gender, and have a couple other problems with like the themes in this book, and also just the writing style and the plot development. I think I might honestly like finish out this series, then make like a video on this series or write a blog post about it or something, because it's such a fascinating series to me and such a fascinating concept to me, in that it is very progressive, but the way in which it's done makes it feel not progressive, to me at least, in this day and age. But again, it's a book I would have absolutely loved when I was younger. I remember really loving Tamora Pierce's Circle of Magic series when I was younger as well, but as an adult, it's dated. It's dated in some of those ways. 3 stars. Number 25 are The Empress of Salt and Fortune by Nivo. A well done little novella. I really liked Inyo and Rabbit's characters, and I felt like in comparison, the narrator / framing device Chi kind of did not stand up next to those characters, felt quite boring and quite flat. I still don't necessarily know if Chi has like a character arc through this story, despite them being the narrator and being like the kind of central figure of this story. So I do really want to continue with this novella series. I think it's called The Singing Hill Cycle, and that's something I hope comes into it in the future, that she gets a little bit more control and gets to get a little bit more development. 4 stars. Number 26, I read The Butcher of the Forest by Premi Mohammed. This is like Jeff Vandermeer meets T. Kingfisher. It's this wonderfully creepy little fantasy novella about like a haunted forest and a tyrant man, and I really enjoyed the bits in the haunted forest and like the vibe of that place, but I didn't love the prose of this. It felt very overdone at points, like falling beneath its own weight, and the ending was just very bizarre to me, and not in a good way. I love bizarre, but like the ending to me just felt like it went completely counter to everything the book was saying before that about like fascism and forgiveness and like the futility of negotiation with like someone who doesn't view you as an equal. It really felt like it prioritized like having a sequel hook over like finishing out its themes and like having cohesive themes. So did not love the ending, but I still would recommend this. It's a novella, it's very short, and it has a fun vibe. Again, I think if you like T. Kingfisher, you might really like this. So 3 stars. Next, I read Harrow the Ninth by Tamsin Muir. I really loved this. Enthralling reading experience. I feel like a book like this really lives or dies on the strength of its payoff. Like, cause like you need to feel like the reading experience was worth it and like you were satisfied in the end. And I was so satisfied. I thought the payoff was so good. I really, really love this novel and the vibe and like what it is doing and how it recontextualizes things through the series. So really enjoyed that. 4 stars. And then I read No Night of the Ninth by Tamsin Muir. This is more sprawling and a little bit less satisfying in the end than Harrow was, but I still really enjoyed it because I really liked seeing such a different main character and a main character who had such a lovely personality and like upbringing, and I really liked getting to see a different side of like the world and see like normal people who aren't a part of the houses and like how they actually live their lives. So I really enjoyed this one as well. 4 stars, and I need a lecto now. Number 24, I read God Killer by Hannah Kaner. I am always a proponent for like more fantasy stories that are not tomes and like more fantasy stories that are standalones and that are shorter than like 800 pages, but this book, 4 POVs in a 291 page book. What was Hannah Kaner thinking? Like, you just don't, or at least I just personally didn't feel connected to any of these characters. I didn't feel like any of them had a character arc or growth because we're hopping from character to character so quickly that we don't really have time to do any of that for any of them. The plot itself was also very boring to me. It's very slice of life travel fantasy, which I don't typically enjoy. It felt very monotonous, and like Kaner tries to break up that monotony by having this creature attack them, but like they quickly figure out that the creature only attacks like every 3 days. So even the break from the monotony was boring. Like that was just the problem with this book to me. Overall, I just thought it was really boring. I just was not hooked or interested in anything this book had to offer, and I've heard it gets gayer in subsequent books, but like even that isn't enough to entice me because I just was so bored by the plot and didn't really love the world building either. I think the concept of the many gods is really interesting and the God Killer is really interesting, but I didn't love the execution. I thought it was, again, just quite boring, quite a video gamified like way to treat the gods, and that's not coming from like a religious place, by the way, just a world building place. So didn't love this. 2 stars. I will not be continuing on. Number 30, The Mask of Mirrors by M.A. Carrick. This was fun. It had a great vibe, a very like, again, steampunk like Venetian vibe, which I love in a book. I love the canals and like the fancy dresses and stuff every once in a while. I really like the characters too and like their dynamics with each other, but I felt like this book had really clunky world building. I think in the author's note it's mentioned that this came out of like a D&D campaign, which makes a lot of sense. Like, I don't know, if you know, you know. Like, it's just the feeling that you need to know everything about this world and you need to know it now and you need to remember it, and like even stuff that is not interesting or important to the plot like needs to be info dumped, because I like that's how it would work in a D&D campaign, and it felt very clunky in places in this book. I also just thought the plot developments like in the latter half of this novel were not where I thought this book was going to go, and I felt like it took away from a lot of the interesting like political intrigue that was happening earlier on in the book. It became a lot more action focused than I wanted it to be, and I still would like to read the rest of the series, but it's like not at the top of my list. I'll get to it eventually because these books are chonkers, and I know I just complained about Hannah Kaner's book being too short, but this one is too long, and it earns that length in some ways, but also like, oh my god, I'm just not in the mood for that right now. Anyways, 3 stars. Then I read The Practice, the Horizon, and the Chain by Sophia Samatar. This is split over Brighhaven if I liked it. Anyways, 4 stars. And last, I read Wild Seed by Octavia E. Butler. So insane and freaky and intellectual. I loved this book. This book really reminded me of specifically the AMC adaptation of Interview with the Vampire, which viewers may know I'm a big fan of. I really loved this book. Just so weird and so interesting. The discussions around like immortality and race and power and slavery and forgiveness and love. These two individuals that are just locked together in love and hatred. Loved that. I didn't love the ending thematically or like plot wise, but I still enjoyed this book enough to immediately go put all of the sequels on hold at the library, so I'll be continuing. 4 stars, and depending on how I feel, I think I could bump that up even. We finally made it. We finally made it. And thank you so much for watching this wrap up. I think next on the block, I'm going to be reading Sword Heart by T. Kingfisher. T. Kingfisher has very rarely worked for me, and like, I'm not even the hugest romantasy fan. I'm excited to read this one because her fantasy has worked for me more than her horror has. And just look at this cover. Like, I'm sorry, but this is just so beautiful. I made my library buy this. My boss literally handed this to me and was like, I processed it just for you. So thank you so much for watching this video. I just want to show you that book because it's so pretty. Anyways. Thank you so much for watching this video. I will see you in the next one, and like I said, we're going to be going to shorter weekly installments of this, so it will not be as long in the future. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you later. Bye!